Please don't fear me, because I know what I want. Please deliver me that song out of your soul. It makes you freeze time, staring in at yourself. It's time to step outside onto the path you once made.
Hello, and welcome to the rap party for Jiangshi and Daoshi. How's it going, guys? Oh, what an interesting trip we've gotten to be here. It's interesting because the series is so short, and yet it was very impactful and very drawn out. But we'll get into all of those details later. First of all, I want to say a big thank you. Thank you to Fruitbat Factory, whom are actually here in the chat. They're going to be participating. So we have if anyone who happens to be listening has any direct questions for them or for me, feel free to please put it in chat. I'll be keeping an eye on it. He's right there, Jake, Jock. I'm not sure how I can't remember. It's been a while since we've chatted, but he would be in there. So like, keep an eye out for him in chat if you're interested at all. Of course, I'll be posting questions, so I hope you don't mind. But yep, we're gonna be talking about that, and we're just gonna go over like what are my thoughts so far. And I say so far because it's very clear that there is more to the story to come, but not for, I guess, not the immediate future. So that'll be something we kind of put on the shelf and hopefully come back to in a later date. But yeah, if you are here listening live, welcome. Hopefully you catch up with us fairly shortly, and thank you for being here. If you are not and you're watching this on the archive, thank you for joining us. We always do these rap parties, which is what I like to call them, especially because it's back from my days working for a school newspaper. It was kind of our crunch day before we would publish something, and I just liked it because it means we stay up late and we talk things out, and we just kind of go a little more wild than planned out, and we just kind of talk about things as they come up. Of course, if you want to ask channel questions, you can do so, but keep in mind that I might deflect away from them occasionally just because I want this to be more focused on this particular series and the fantastic characters. Also, let me know if for some reason if I'm not coming through clear or if the music's too loud, like I can adjust it. I try to plan for all of that and make sure it's all kosher, so it shouldn't be too bad. But anyway, thank you. So, what is this series? I mean, seriously. Oh yes, and by the way, Happy New Year to everybody. I guess that's the other part. Oh, and I guess one last thing. Shout out and thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you guys so much. You guys are helping expand the channel. I actually have a brief announcement about channel stuff. We have some fantastic patrons. Their names appear at the end of every video. Very happy to have them here. They're official lab mems. They're doing their part in trying to help make the channel even better. And we've got some great things coming in the pipeline. First things first, this will be my first official announcement of it, though I did hint at it at the end of last episode, but we officially have I have contracted an artist to do some custom emojis. We've been able to have some fantastic ones to use on the channel from the Muv-Love community and from Fruitbat Factory, again, who sponsored this game. So like, we've always had some pretty fun ones there, and I think we'll always hang on to at least some of them, though they may rotate through time. However, one of the things that we will start seeing is expansion of the Discord, where I'm going to have these custom emojis made for the channel. Hopefully meme it up a bit with some of the long-standing traditions that we have with our channel and experiences, and, you know, just kind of capturing maybe some more characterization of myself and my OG characters, OC characters, just in various stances and forms. So it should be really fun, and hopefully we can add even more emojis to it. I believe there's like nitrous systems on Discord. I'm actually starting to look into that tonight. But regardless, thank you guys so much, and now let's get started right into the meat and the potatoes. So this story has been one of the most interesting ones because, like, let's be honest, I've become more and more aware of Japanese lore, but this was one of the first forays into Chinese lore I've ever been in. Like, I've watched shows and read some material that talks about it before, but never in like this depth or direct manner. Now, there are a lot of parallelisms. Obviously, there's a lot of influence between the two cultures, so it's not like it's a lot of it is really alien per se, but there was a lot that I learned and interesting concepts. And the funny thing is I'm starting to notice these types of mythological compositions and stories bleeding through in other forms of media across the internet and across various shows. And it's been really nice being able to kind of be on a more level understanding of them thanks to this game. So by and large, this game at least has culturally expanded my horizon. So I'm very grateful for that. And come on, let's be honest, this is a wacky adventure, and like wacky in the good way. I don't think I've ever seen a series that bounces between the two extremes more violently than this does. I mean, on one hand, you're going to have these fantastic flowing scenes of animated, just cute and adorableness, especially with Luan and Lingling interaction. Like, it's just oodles and just pouring out with just adorableness, and to the point of almost being sickening, but you can never get too much of it. Almost like eating chocolate. You know you need to stop after like the first several bites of a pure chocolate bar, but you just never want to stop because it's just so amazing anyway. So we jumped into that, and it's always so good. And then you get these violent throws into violence where it's bloody, it's graphic, it's intense, it's life-threatening. Like I don't know, like very few stories have been as lethal as this one has been, not only with just like seeing characters die, but also just making it abundantly clear that like they die horrifically. It's not shy on the blood, which is like, again, it's such a tone change, but I think it does it a service. It's not trying to be anything else. It's trying to tell a story about adorable characters thrust into terrifying and terrible situations. And I think it does a lot of credit to the story. Again, it can be the only downside would be is if you somehow got into the story not understanding that the dichotomy exists. But the intro to the series does a great job of kind of painting expectations. And I do want to say before we get into the lore of it, I also want to say I really like the idea of what Fruitbat Factory and the original publishers and creators of this series decided to do for their release into various other markets. Like, I know it's not just the English market, I believe. Yeah, how many languages is it translated into? I guess that's my first question. I know you typically have English, and I believe you also tend to go to like German, French, and Spanish, but I'm not 100% on that. Like, how many languages was this translated into with your project? While he's typing that out, I'm just going to say that the idea, though, is that they decided to take it in a really unique direction where instead of just releasing the game, which is typical, they released the first two parts, which are really strong on their own, for free. I hope that model's worked really well, because I'd also love to hear that, too. Like, if you happen to know, like, did this model really work out for you better than you've seen previously, where people can get a really good taste of the story before they commit to a purchase, but then you obviously leave them on a big cliffhanger, so they want to know more, they're enticed to buy more. I think that model works really well for visual novels. Okay, so he responded, it's English, Japanese, and simplified traditional Chinese. Okay, but I know you guys do other translations eventually, usually, but like that's a good platform to start off with, especially because I guess it's interesting. So is this the first time the game's been released in Japan too? I don't think so. Like, if I remember correctly, when we first were talking about this series, like it was released in Japan originally. And obviously they all speak in Japanese, so that makes a lot more sense. I don't know why I'm even asking that. So yeah, it comes out in Japanese, but it's on Steam in Japanese, which it probably wasn't on Steam before. But yeah, English and Chinese. I wonder what the Chinese audience would think of this, and I wonder if they can even get access to this very easily. Like, I don't know. It definitely seems like a game that has content that might be a little tough to get past some of those filters they love so much over there. Well, I don't say they love them, but the government at least does. Regardless of that side of things, I think it's really impressive to see. And then, yeah, it's usually kept Japanese until 2016. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Okay. So, anyway, as I was saying, like, the idea of the modeling of, like, releasing some for free. So, like, to this day, like, you could literally just send this, like, to your friends and family and be like, hey, I like this. You should give it a try and see what you think. Interesting. That was the audio could have cut out there. I think that might have been an editing mistake. I'm sorry about that. Very abrupt. Anyway, I think it's a very practical way to do it, and I hope it was really successful, because I could see a lot of visual novels really doing that and pulling it off. Like, could you imagine if you were developing something like Steins Gate? Muv-Luv might not have worked quite as well, just because, like, it's such a package deal, and you really need to experience all of it. Chopping it up at all could be, like, a little problematic. But Steins Gate, what if you could release Steins Gate up until, up through some of the D-mail experiments and, like, understanding, like, what CERN has kind of been up to? Like, that would be a powerfully an effective way to get people hooked into the story. I know if I only could read that much of it, I would probably just buy it right after that, because it'd be so gripping. And because getting it open to be free gets a lot more people in the door. Anyway, you answered Chinese translation is something developers wanted even before the Steam release, so it's nice we're able to do it. Yeah, I bet. I mean, when you have such a strong influence of such a culture, like, I'm sure, like, you would love nothing better than that. Like, for instance, I've toyed around with the idea, and I'm working on, like, I'd love to work on an original idea I've had for a visual novel. I actually have two currently running. One that's very well fleshed out, but I initially wanted it to be a novel, but I think it'd make a great visual novel. And a second story that I think would play extremely well as a visual novel, kind of like was conceptually a visual novel before anything else. And if I do those, I absolutely want to try my best to get it translated in Japanese, just because that's where a lot of inspiration, maybe not in the same way, like, as in, like, cultural inspiration, but more like the inspiration for, like, making a visual novel. Obviously, we, like, those of us who want to be involved in visual novels, we started with Japanese ones. Like, that's where, like, the bread and butter came from. That's where they originated. So naturally, any visual novelist who wants to publish would like to get their stuff published in Japanese at some point. So I totally get that. Anyway, you answer. So our Fruitbat Factory says that as for the release model, at least episode 1 and 2 have gotten more players than we could otherwise expect in the first year. The full game is also pay when you win, or what? I'm not sure what PWYW is for on Itch.io, which is not a huge platform, but a very nice one, especially for VN, so we were trying to support it on that front. Yeah. Itch.io is great, especially because it seems like it's a place where people can publish without having to have, like, the super, like, draining co-sale figures that come with Steam. Like, Steam, they've got such a great gig going where they make it easy to access. Oh, pay what you want. Yeah, that makes sense. Pay what you want. Oh, that's nice. It's like a tip system. But, like, Steam, they have to get, they get a cut of whatever they do by providing, like, a platform that makes it easy to access or organize and just maintain your game library. They just get a sizable chunk. So Itch.io, especially for starting developers, and there's a lot of VN developers that just don't have the financing to really make that kind of a splash in Steam, or at least not reliably. Giving them an option like Itch.io is a great idea. Although, like, that site can also become just bogged down, which is kind of a downside of having a platform that's so easy to work with. Anyway, yes, pay what you want. This is the hardest VN ever to localize, so I don't think we'll be adding more languages easily. Subject material side, it has thousands of graphic and hundreds of videos. Yeah, that's true. Ooh, that's a good point. That could be a nightmare, especially if you couldn't, like, I'm guessing you have the raw files to work with, but it's so, like, it's so nuts and boltsy with getting in there. That would be problematic. Aw, that is sad. But hopefully it still can find a good audience, because so far the English version has been great. I love the idea of being able to, like, highlight terms that people might be struggling to keep up with, and just, like, get an info dump, kind of like a tips section, but it's so accessible. Despite the fact that I did not find out how I could work it for, like, what was it, like 4 episodes? What a nightmare. I think the problem was if now that I did a little experimenting, by the way, I think the reason why I was having trouble with it is because I think while text is appearing on screen, it won't access those tips. So I was reading along with it, and as soon as, like, I got to the end, I tended to click right over without really checking. So I think that's the big difference. Is, like, once the text had finished across the screen, then you'd have access to the highlighting tips. So yeah, it was definitely not a strong suit for me. I did what I could, man. I'm sorry. But by the end, once I figured out how it actually worked, and, like, like what to look for and how to find it. It was very handy, especially because by the end, like the terms were being dropped really, really commonly. So it was really good to have. As a matter of fact, I have to say this game and the lore in it, which I'll get to in a little bit, has inspired me in a few other ways. But like I said, I'll probably focus on that later. Let's jump right into some of the meat and potatoes of this series, which I gotta say first is the characters. So I want to kind of go through each character, or at least major character, and kind of break them down. And I'm not going to be including the enemies in this, because enemies, they're so mysterious or single note that I feel like they're better to be talked about separately, because I don't see them much as characters as yet. There's one I might count, but we'll get to him. So first we got to go with Luan. He's the first character we see, and it's quite an awesome way to introduce him as being chased by yokai and like doing fairly well. But I think it makes a good impression of like helping us kind of see ourselves as him, besides like, or like understanding him at least on the human level, because he's being removed from his assassin life. So you get to see kind of like the human side of him before we really see like the really aggressive, capable, dangerous side of him. And I think that's a really important way to balance and grow a character like Luan, because he could easily suffer from too cool for school syndrome or Mary Sue syndrome. The idea that like it feels like he can't do any wrong, which obviously he does, but like especially early on when you need to establish like why he can go toe to toe with yokai or like an entire group of like yakuza and not be like perturbed by it. It can make him sound a little like I said, Mary Sue-ish. But so like being able to bring the humanity out of him and then see like that humanity kind of just evaporate made a really compelling story out of a character that could be considered boring if he were displayed differently. It also helps too that like he ends up effectively dying right in the middle of the whole story, like the beginning of the story, and making the arc the fact that he did die, but they're trying to like undie him is actually kind of a fun idea. Frankly, if I'm honest, I don't think they're gonna do it. Like, if I'm gonna be like future scoping, I think that either the price to actually bring him effectively back and bind his soul and body together properly is gonna be too high, or if they do it, the cost is gonna be so great you might not even want it to happen. And I could see Luan. He kind of seems like a guy who's like he's been willing to die for a cause he could believe in for a while. Like obviously he doesn't want to die. He wants to be able to have a life. But if he felt like it meant if his death would mean like saving like Ling Ling, I think he'd do it in a heartbeat. Which we kind of see at the end of this series. Although he had a backup plan, you know, he's clever enough to like hedge his bets. But it is kind of interesting to see, and I can't. I don't know. I feel like a story like this, and immortality itself as a narrative icon and bit, it's tough to justify an immortality without trying to bring up like the downsides to it, in either achieving it and or like experiencing it. Which is an idea that's really fun to explore, because it's one of those things where like we all say like, oh yeah, I'd love to live forever, but then if you're honest or reality, like probably wouldn't. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be one of those interesting things where I'm not sure what to expect from Luan's story, but we will definitely have to see how it goes. Then of course we have Ling Ling, who is the best master you could ever ask for. Character design can be a bit problematic, I think, because she is often sexualized, and she's also very much childlike in appearance and has the whole like, oh, she's actually 300 years old type thing. That's not so much a problem, because people can be very just small and adorable looking. And of course it's an animated character, it's not a real person, but it can sometimes get a little uncomfortable because of that. But that's a personal thing. And I don't think they do it so much or to the extent where it becomes really problematic, because it's not really like a true, this so far isn't a true eroge. And that's not a, like, what if it was, I mean, that's fine. I play and enjoy eroge all the time. But it's just that idea that like they do seem to be captivated by these younger and sexualizing younger people. Of course, it's to highlight the evilness of characters, which, I mean, granted it works, but it's a line that can be interesting to walk, and they pull it off pretty good. Like where, despite like the implications of things, typically people get what's coming to them for those viewpoints. And I also think it's very clear that Ling Ling, while she has a childlike demeanor, she very much is not a child, and we really get that strongly at the end of part 3, like where we kind of she really comes across as kind of she reminds me of someone playing a clerical type character in Dungeons and Dragons, somebody who's supposed to like be a representative of a higher power and or ideal. She embodies the ideal of innocence and purity and like good, where she wants, like, she makes the one promise never to kill again, and where she tries to hold him to that, and where she's so naive she often misses innuendo or implication, where it's fairly obvious for experienced assassins and like worldly people to see what's going on or what people are saying and how they mean. She often gets that glossed over and doesn't quite pick up on it. And yet she's willing to go like to the ends of the earth if it means protecting people whom she feels are good and righteous and like innocent. It's a very compelling ideology and a fantastic one to be following. But then to see at the very end of part 3, when she thought she'd lost Luan forever, we saw that veil and that like that idealization pull away, and she did something freaking like, it didn't quite say it, but she effectively used that demonic apostate Jian, and she effectively used it as fuel to create an abomination, a kind of super yokai of her own, the demon baby thing. And like, it was very clear that that's not like part of the pure like Taoism that we know she represents and what she upholds. And it makes me wonder, and really curious to see where the story keeps going, to see like what's this dark side of Ling Ling, and is the dark side to her a big part of why she actually came down from the mountain. Like, she said she just couldn't reach enlightenment, so she came down to like search for it. But I feel like there must be more to it now, because would a pure Taoist who was really capable of achieving enlightenment be able to do such like perverse twistings of the systems there? There's a few other tiny hints about it too, you say? Curious to find out more. Yeah, like there's little things here and there, like that I'm sure I missed quite a lot of them. But in that part 3 especially, like there was all these implications of things, and like she also like I guess one of the other hints that was there is how she almost immediately with a few context clues can pull out like what kind of like twisted magics people are using, like how they're abusing Qi and how they're abusing the Taoist teachings and twisting them into perverse ways, like how an apostate works. Like she knew exactly how they work to intimate details. She knew how the possession and manipulation of the bodies worked to, again, intimate levels. And even recognized what happened with the nine-tailed fox when he was being effectively like super puppeted, possession puppeted, I guess you might call it. She knew instantly what they were, how they worked, how to defeat them. Now, I could believe that she might have just been trained to slay and destroy these evil beings, but then she then pulls out a hat trick where she effectively uses those abilities masterfully. There's definitely something wrong there, and I'm really curious to see what it's all about. For instance, does Ling Ling possibly have like two sides to her? Like literally two sides to her? Does she have a childlike, innocent side to her that might be almost unaware? Because while she was able to summon the demon baby thing, when she realized Luan was alive again, she just kind of flipped and she never really brought it up anymore, right? Like, you think she would have been ashamed or even like tried to comment about like what she did was like perverse? Yet she just doesn't even mention it again. I thought that was odd. Like, I don't know if like it'll be brought up later, because I could, like, they were obviously trying to wrap up the story. Maybe that would have been a bit like distracting. But I just think it's strange that she never even acknowledged it. And so it makes me wonder if there's something like more duplicative going on in her that makes her unaware of just how far she's willing to take things and what she's capable of doing and whether or not she was trained to do it. That's another thing. Like, she had to learn this somehow. You don't just gain it by like even like studying like how things work. She must have like really received training of some kind. So that's gonna be really interesting. So Ling Ling, I think by far is my favorite character, and she's the most interesting character. But then the next character I wanted to talk about is the cutest character. She actually happens to be on the screen right now. It's again, dear sister to Luan. Whether she's actually a sister or not, I doubt. I'm guessing they just were brought up to be assassins in the organization. They were probably orphans and just happened to be brought up like around the same time. So they just refer to each other as brother sister. Yeah, we heard about nothing about Ling Ling. Jake is saying we've heard almost nothing about Ling Ling before the start of the story so far. Yeah, you're right. Like she's kind of just said, "Oh yeah, wandered down the mountain, and I'm here to look for a way to achieve immortality. That's not the like enlightenment way, but also not the like super broken, not really immortality way." So yeah, there's something else going on there probably. Ooh, gosh, you're being tantalizing, man. That's cruel. Anyway, to Yen though. Yen is just awesome. By the way, like I will say, hands down, I think Yen is the cutest of the characters, and I think that she would also be the character whom, whilst I would never trust her like to beyond like anything, like I wouldn't trust her a whole hand over fist for anything. Period. I also do think that she's one of the more refreshing and just interesting characters to like listen to, especially when she gets her chi realigned or ki realigned by Ling Ling, which also kind of is interestingly problematic. Is like, is this like, did she just bring out aspects of Yan's personality that were always there but maybe were being suppressed, or is she somehow like soul rewriting Yan? Because that is also a very questionable application of ki manipulation, I will say. But Yen is just fantastic. I love how she's very cheery. Absolutely, she's like a memer, and also very like, she's just conniving and always explicitly manipulative, even to her friends. And like Luan just kind of just has to roll his eyes and just kind of like, oh, I know what's going on here, or I think I know what's going on here. She has a great theme song too. Yeah. Everything about Yen is just great. I mean, her look, like I said, she's the cutest character, I think. I think that the stylization of her dress, the way that she fights, is all very just captivating and fascinating, especially because she's, as far as I know, just a human. You know, like Ling Ling's like insane to watch fight, and Luan, like, well, he effectively is human, just happens to be undead. It's really fun to watch. Yen is kind of more enticing and captivating for me. I also just love the way that she plays the game. She could potentially be a little less like duplicative. Like, I feel like she's trying to like genuinely show like a genuine love for Ling Ling, but at the same time she can't help but exploit her, which just says a lot about her character. Again, I wouldn't trust her with to like anywhere near me unless I'd literally paid her off to be my friend. But I would love to try and be friends with her. I'd regret it, but I'd love to try it too. So yeah, there's not really much else to say about her other than the fact that I just think she's great. Well-designed character, lots of fun, and I'm very happy every time I see her on the screen. Especially the little dancing emoji with the fans. I think that's very cute. All right, now for the next characters, these are going to be a little quicker because these were more like, they were like focused side characters, I would call them, where they definitely are central to some core plot aspects, but they also aren't really like going to be overarching focuses. The first one is Infa, and I honestly cannot remember her name, and I tried looking it up, and it just doesn't pop up much in the story, and I ran out of time. But Infa and her like kind of sister, again, I'm not sure if they're actually related or they just happen to be raised and trained by the organization together. Oh yeah, there's Infa right here in the bunny costume. Oh gosh, the bunny costumes. Oh, what a casino. But those two were interesting. Like, they were introduced as the innocent, like, captured, like, sweethearts. Infa and Jinfa. Yeah, I knew it was similar. So Jinfa. Jinfa's a scary one. Infa's scary, but Jinfa is terrifying. I like their introduction was really like, there was something off about them from the beginning, but I didn't anticipate them to be like literal like assassins. I just thought that there was something really sketchy about their whole like story of how they got captured. And they are sisters. Okay, yeah. So yeah, here reveal now. Jake is saying they are actually sisters. So that makes sense. Okay. Good to know. So they're actual sisters, and just seeing them being like able to, oh, that's true, they do share a family name. You think I'd pick up on that, but again, that doesn't mean a whole lot when you're talking about organizations who like are training people from like childhood to be assassins. Like they could just give people a name to share, and they might not actually be siblings. It's hard to know, but I'll trust you. I mean, you know very, very well. Anyway, so the two of them, Infa and Jinfa, I think that they're very effective at what they do. I think I would fall for it, and like the Nine-Tailed Fox, he fell for it like multiple times with Infa, and I think it's a good ploy. Like they're master manipulators. You know nothing. Okay. So it's not definite, but all signs point to it. Okay. I thought you would like. I guess I got the impression that you would read the parts that haven't come out yet as you're getting ready to work with the translations. But maybe they just don't cover it in the future there. I guess that would be a fair point. I could see them fading out of the story a lot as we move forward. But who knows? Maybe they'll stick around. I mean, they made an appearance in Section 3 that I didn't quite anticipate, so maybe they'll appear more and more. But anyway, the dynamic of the way that they attack problems and the way that they solve them is really interesting. Like, it's so infinitely bait and switchy. Oh, okay, so they aren't even out yet. Oh, I didn't even know they weren't even published yet. Like, most visual novels are published, like, in Japan long before they get translated. So yeah, that makes sense. So they aren't out yet, so they haven't been read. That figures. God, I should do my homework more before I do these things. To be fair, this week's been a real crazy. Like, normally I'm a week ahead when publishing these live streams, but with Christmas and New Year's, it kind of took its toll on my schedule. So hopefully next time I'll be a little more on the ball. Anyway, to wrap up them, Infa and Jinfa. Generally terrifying. Infa is intriguing, but I do find her less like I want to sit down and have tea a couple times a week with Yen as a character. I would love to just go take Ling Ling to amusement parks all day. Luan, I think I could see just like chilling with him would be really fun, even though he's not a conversationalist. Like, I could see myself enjoying spending time with them as characters. Infa and Jinfa, no. I really just don't see myself enjoying myself like around them. Infa more so for sure. She's definitely more like worthwhile, but like I think I'd be more terrified. Like the more she flirts or like is more like engaging with you, the more I would be like convinced she's trying to kill me. Because that's just how she does things. And I'm guessing she wouldn't be that interested in me anyway, so it's fine. Like, we'd mutually, respectfully not be around each other. So, like, but as a character, she's very well done. Jinfa, I'm not so sure I'm on. Like, I'm not super sold with her. Like, she's very interesting and compelling and terrifying as a character, but, like, she's so undeveloped at this point, it's hard to really, like, relate to her. Other than just her being a psychopath who just thinks about murder constantly. And that's kind of what she's meant to be. So I'm hoping in future parts, like if she does make a reappearance, I hope we get to see more about her. Maybe see the human side to her. Because we've seen Infa's human side, especially in part 3, where she's like subtly kind of tsundereing about Luan, where she's kind of worried about him and trying to make sure that he like is up to speed on things. It's just kind of, it's interesting. So we'll have to see that. So yeah. Man, like I had no clue that this was like an ongoing project. That's good to know though. We'll have to see more of that. And then Tao and Mao. Alright, the twins. They're interesting. I think that their Taoism, like the using the seals, has been one of the more interesting uses of ki we've seen in the story. And one of the more mentally like captivating. It's funny because like I've always seen like those charm papers in various anime. And I even thought of like I had a character that was running in a D&D campaign, or at least trying to. We did like 2 sessions and it died, like most D&D sessions I end up doing. If I'm not actually like the one in charge of our game, if I'm not game master of our games, like they tend to die really fast, unfortunately. Hopefully that'll change in the near future. But anyway, in that one I actually made an artificer class from the D&D, which are people who like they make trinkets and like pseudo magic items and eventually can craft magic items themselves, and they use them in combat and such. and I did a flavor text for his campaign to fit the setting because he was doing it very much in a Eastern style, like China, Korea, like motifs and themes going on. And so I designed my character where I was an artificer, but instead of just making like handy little like machines, the idea was I would the character would make clay, straw, and wood models, and then would attach charms to them that would animate them into being functionary like temporary magic items. And I thought that was really fun, and it was well before I did this, and so seeing the actual like kind of application of the lore around such charms was really fun to see. Like obviously is it the most ideal of the different like methods of accessing your ki as a Taoist? No, but it's one that I think is the most captivating. And so for me personally, if I were to pick one to study that I can see as of now, it would be that one. Granted, I'd be terrible at it because I'm sure that to do charms properly, you have to have some kind of artistry, and I'm just not good. I mean, I'm trying to do model painting, and it's so slow, and I'm so bad at it. It's something you just got to practice, I suppose, but I definitely like it. I just like the idea, and then the characters were really interesting. It's funny because like really close to the beginning, like it was making ideas about like puppeteering, and I immediately was jumping to the idea of like, what if you puppeted a corpse? And then the first enemy that they ended up facing was the one that kind of ran in with like, I don't know, like, was it a bomb or something? No, it's just a crazy guy who came in after the two of them. And effectively it was a puppeted corpse. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't think anything of it. And then of course you get the grand reveal like, oh yeah. So, yeah, it's like Tao, she's totally dead. Like she died a while ago. She has the gaping hole in her stomach. Like she's actually not alive. She's flat out dead. It did a good job pulling the wool over my eyes for that, and I thought it was a really cool application of what that sect is supposed to be really good at, and it was really fun to be able to be a part of that and kind of experience it. Mao, I think as a character is very unstable, like not just like, oh, she's an unstable personality, like I think the way that they ended up writing her, because there was so much mystery and like layers that they wanted to like do reveals, that even at the end of her story, I feel like we don't know much about her or who she actually is. So I'm curious. I'm kind of hoping that she'll be involved in upcoming future stories, because she seems like she could have a more dynamic personality that we just never got to explore. We did get to see a lot, but she got so hung up on her own past that we didn't really get to see who she is now. So I'm hoping we get to see more about who she's becoming. Though with her being an idol in her sister's place, I doubt that she's going to be appearing very much. Yeah, so Jake, you're saying, like, I guessed at it before we revealed. Yeah, I just didn't connect all the dots for her being a corpse, so it was animated. I was able to guess in context of, like, some of the, like, themes that were going to be happening, but I didn't quite, like, I was still surprised when it happened. I was still, like, maybe I wasn't, like, blown away, but I was surprised. And, like, 'cause I genuinely thought that she was, I guess what I was thinking the direction it was going to go was that, like, when they were able to defeat the Jian, I thought she was going to drop dead, because it implied that she was being kept alive by his power somehow because they were connected. So that was what I thought the grand reveal was going to be, is that they were going to get revenge, they were going to defeat the apostate, and immediately she was just going to drop dead. Didn't quite happen that way, but we did still see a lot of similar themes. So yeah, I'm very happy I was able to keep up with the motif and kind of be appraised of what was going on and how it was going to play out a bit. I'm not getting too rusty quite yet. So that's really like all the characters. I mean, everyone else, they're very minor characters or they're enemies. But before we jump into some of them, I wanted to deviate into the lore. Oh my gosh, the lore. I was thinking this before, and I think I mentioned it right at the beginning. I've never really been particularly introduced to a lot of Chinese mythology. Again, it's not that the themes and like creatures are that far off from Japanese mythology, because again, they're sister cultures. They are heavily related. They've had an intertwined past, migration. They share an alphabet. They share just so much. It makes sense that there would be a lot of similarities between the two, but there are distinct differences. And from what I've seen, at least in this story, like like working with ki and like understanding like the ki and having how related it is to all these narratives is definitely something that was presented very strongly, and I really liked how they are embellishing it and kind of talking about it and the different sects of it. And I really like how in the interludes they will actually bring up like examples from Chinese mythology and history that tie to the subject matter, like various emperors and like how they worked with witches and sought immortality and stuff. Like, it's been really interesting. And I guess another dose I was really glad I played this before because one of the games I play in my free time, like, because I sadly have more free time than I have half free time, I call it, where I'm not actually free to do whatever I want, but I have time to kind of twiddle my thumbs. And so I twiddle them in the Fate Grand Order. And recently they had a chapter that took place in a Chinese setting. And it was funny because like this game kind of prepped me for it, because they made a lot of references to mythology, but they never explained a whole lot of it or like some of like the mechanisms that were behind it. And I got to see a lot of that kind of come up in in this series. And so I was very much like, oh, okay, I get what they're saying here. It's like even when they explained it, I typically was already on page with everything. So it was really, really good to see and very happy to be a part of. But I want to know more, and so I'm excited. I want to see this story continue forward because of that. I want to see and learn more about the lore, especially the different Taoisms. But it also makes me hesitant to like want to go out and read it myself, because I want to see, kind of enjoy this experience and pseudo education that I get with the VM. And it kind of makes things more compelling and memorable. I do say I'm absolutely stealing some of it from like the apostate system. I'm absolutely stealing that. Nobody in my game group watches these, so I'm gonna go ahead and say a little bit. I've really been getting into Call of Cthulhu recently. Fantastic series. We've been playing an adventure path, such pre-written story. Been really, really fun. I want to take things in my own direction. It's kind of funny because I want to play the setting, but I'm a big fan of sci-fi, and so I'm going to try and hybridize like the system and tweak it to make it just work in a sci-fi setting, because hyper-realistic sci-fi is something I've always wanted and never really found a system for. Closest I've had is Starfinder, but again, that's like it's a system that's like about being heroic. Call of Cthulhu is about being human and the limitations that you have, and so I've always wanted to do a sci-fi in a setting like that. So I'm going to pull it off. I'm going to make it happen because I'm really got a compelling idea. I've got a kind of two arcs. I've got like a introduction story arc that's going to be very like contained, and then I have an overarching arc that's going to be a lot more open-ended. But the first arc I'm going to deal with is actually going to be, they're going to be fighting with an enemy, an eldritch horror effectively, but it's going to be operating off of the bones of the lore of an apostate, and I really like that idea. The idea of like achieving immortality by transplanting your essence into somebody else and being reborn forcibly through them, and out for me at least. I'm not sure what the apostate would look like if it actually came out. Like, sadly, we might see that by the end of this series, because like the main villain seems very intent to make it happen. So unfortunately that makes me worry for the future of Mao. But the concept of that and like giving birth to an effective monster is something that I think would be a really compelling story for that, and so I'm totally using that. So I'll be doing more research about like that apostate, but just in general, like all of it's really fascinating, and it's really also fascinating to see parallels between like the magics and mystics of China and just mystics in general that I grew up hearing stories about, and like that I'm more accustomed to, like, you know, European lore, which I'm guessing that like there's gonna be like there's obviously a good reason for that. The fact that like we're humanity, we're all the same species, and stories travel, and we've had communication for thousands of years. So naturally, while stories might take different shapes and forms, they intersect and they interweave with each other. Like there's so many similarities that you can see in voodoo that you see in a lot of the different types of Taoist magics. The bones do seem very similar, and I'm guessing that there's a reason for it. I'd love to like I've never been interested in like anthropology, but this is one make me interested in it. Like I would love to try and figure out like how all these things got connected and what cultural exchanges kind of led to these like unifying like mythos patterns that we see throughout all these different cultures that are like so different from each other in so many other ways. But anyway, like. It's been really fun to read and understand and kind of follow, and I'm sure there's so much more out there. It makes me curious. I want to learn more about Chinese mythology and history. This, again, it's something that I was very much, that we went over so sparsely in my own education. I just don't know anything. So I want to know more about, like, yeah, Jack's pointing out, it's quite a tangle. Yeah, humanity, let me tell you, it's the biggest hairball ever. And like you never know what's gonna be like plucked through or like driven through like culturally, which is something that's really cool to see in writing. I've talked about Brandon Sanderson as a writer and a novelist before, but one thing he's really good about is working culture. He's had stories that traverse, like he'll cover like a series of books that cover like a 10-year period, and then you'll see that same like setting, planet, cultures and stuff, but he'll advance it several hundred years, and he'll have this really cool, what feels like a very natural progression of like how would society change and mingle with each other if you took cultures and blended them together suddenly because of a force of some kind of like intervention that happens, some big event, cataclysm or something. And then you take these cultures, you forcibly blend them together, then a few hundred years, how, like what did that do? Like what folklore stories like stayed over time, and how do historical figures who are like very, very human become so mythological over time? That's something we see a lot of in Chinese and Japanese culture, I think. But Chinese is very evident with these stories about like people who were very human, like emperors who, were doing things. And then over a course of hundreds of years, their stories get so twisted that they become like almost like sub-gods in some ways, but like not like worshipped, like, oh, you should worship him, more of like this idea of like that they like commanded armies in these incredible ways, and they had access to mystical powers that were beyond our ken. It's like so interesting. So Jockey is saying, just as one example, in episode 3 there's a gag about a giraffe in the zoo. Yeah, that I think that went a little over my head. It's Kirin in Japanese and Quillin in Chinese, which sound essentially the same, but it's a mythical beast in both languages. But it's actually based on giraffe, which is also Kirin in Japanese. Yeah. So yeah, like that was that. So she did act like it was a mystical creature, but I recognized it as a giraffe. So yeah, I'm glad I kind of caught on to what that was, but I probably should do more research into like what the difference is between a giraffe and the mystical version of a giraffe. Like that's obviously one of those like super synonym things where like the word means two different things, but it's spelled exactly the same and has completely different meaning. So it's like context is super important, which by the way, the little smatterings I've learned of Japanese, context is everything. Like we have plurals and like ways to shift words a little bit to make them like transferable meaning very apparent. Sounds like in Japanese, context and pitch is very much the more important thing, which can definitely make it a much more of a bear to learn if you aren't already familiar with it. That's really interesting, though, about like the word and the play on words too. That's really cool. Like those are the stuff that gets so easily lost in translation that are really tough to like keep up with. And it's one of the most unfortunate things about like having such great stories that need to be translated. Like there's that filter that's going to like some jokes aren't going to land, references aren't going to land, and like thankfully we have tips and translators who are so gifted that can try and help us bridge that gap. But it's one of those downsides, which is why I really do think, well, I doubt we'll ever be able to see a lot of, or even a few visual novels on like the level of like Muv-Luv, Steins Gate, and even like Daoshi, and Daoshi, like the level of like detail, writing, and animation and style is so powerful. I have yet to see anything come close to this type of stuff from the West. But I'm hoping as we do, I want to see more visual novels that talk about our mythos and our histories, and like that we're really familiar with, but using the medium of visual novels and the art style to tell those stories. I think it'd be really cool to see. So that's something I hope to see in the future, and something I would like to incorporate more if I were to be writing a visual novel. Though, like the story that I implicitly said was like it kind of genesised itself from an idea of making a visual novel. Has a lot to do with English cultural mythos, and like the setting and everything, where everything takes place and how it takes place. Very much would be something that's more relatable to my ancestry and my upbringing. But I would love to take the narrative and the display of visual novels and apply it to that medium, because I think that might be the thing that we can offer culturally here in like the U.S. and Britain, like our nations and the people who are fans of visual novels. I'm hoping we can start seeing us being able to present such fascinating looks into the cultural identity of characters we invent and like settings that we have these stories take place in. I think it's something that we should do and shouldn't be afraid of. Yet it doesn't seem to be a thing. It's like a lot of stories still are so heavily influenced by visual novels. Like a good example is Doki Doki Literature Club. Like that studio, Team Salvato, like they're from Idaho. I grew up in Idaho, but it's like it's the middle of nowhere. There's no cultural renaissance there. It was settled in the West times, but again, like it was barely settled. Like there's like nothing there like of big note, and yet they made a visual novel that was impactful worldwide. And yet one of the downsides is that it was still so heavily Japanese. Like even a lot of the names like Natsuki, Sayori, like those are very much more culturally appropriate names for Japan. I would love to see them do something in the visual novel style that could be more like culturally Western, just because I think that there's a lot of great narratives to explore there. That just haven't been done yet. But maybe it's because like people who haven't been able to sell it. But maybe that'll change. Visual novels are kind of going through, like, I would almost call it a renaissance now. We're getting more and more things translated over. There's a hype building about visual novels as a medium in general. Is it going to be a tsunami kind of build? I don't think so. Maybe though. Like I'm starting to wonder, because like the Muv-Luv group, like they're publishing and localizing so much. Like just in this past year, they like what took like effectively 8 years to bring like Muv-Luv original like to English listeners and readers has exploded to where now like almost like so much supplementary Muv-Luv content in the past year has been released, and they're planning more, and they're developing more kinds of games around that universe that's based on a visual novel. Like it's just so exciting for the future of visual novels, and it's something I wanted to capitalize on. It's one of the things I want to do, and like I think that as like the medium becomes more ingrained in society, kind of like anime is becoming so ingrained in like just mainstream society, visual novels are probably going to be hot on the heels. And once it gets more integration, I think we're going to see some pretty powerful and amazing stuff happen in the genre. Anyway, that's way off topic, but that's about all I was going to cover with the lore anyway. So want to wrap things, kind of start wrapping things up. I want to talk about enemies, and then I'm going to make predictions about the next parts of the story before we end tonight. So first of the enemies, the yokai in general, they were just a blast. Again, it's really fun learning about some of the myth and mythology of China. And the yokai, the demons, they're very interesting. Like, talk about like an intricate system. Like, demons for Japan and China are just, there's so much to them and what they are and what they do. It's kind of overwhelming. But being able to see like piecewise like introductions is really nice. The yokai, like the demon heads on legs, like those are terrifying. I don't know what it is, but they when it comes to like horrific abominations, like China and Japan, they got it locked down. Like even the scariest stories that I heard growing up are nothing compared to freaking yokai. But like it's been really fun to learn about them, even though like, I have trouble remembering like what they're called. Like they leave an impression, and it's a very, very powerful one. I really like it, and it's something I look forward to continuing to learn more about in my own time. The nine-tailed fox, he's pretty derpy, not gonna lie. He's super obnoxious, but like his power set and like what he did, like how he kept himself safe and, you know, prevented himself from being like, you know, killed was really cool to see. And then seeing how like they were able to overcome that was really cool to see too. Just very clever application, and like these powers that make him look insurmountable, and then to see him being beaten anyway is really, it's a fun journey to go on. To make the villain, there's actually something in my storytelling I'm not good at yet. I really want to be better at making villains look super powerful and unbeatable, but then allowing the heroes to also be able to find ways to actually like fight and defeat them without making it feel like they're getting handed like a freebie. Like a cop out is kind of like what you see with Ganon in Lord of the Rings. What I'm talking about in Zelda games, where like, oh, he's like all powerful, he's got all these amazing things, but then you get the Master Sword and you can kill him now. It's like it's kind of a MacGuffin. It's like a Deus Ex Machina. Now, granted, like Zelda does a good job applying that into their story, but you gotta admit, like it's still kind of like it's a cop out type of deal. Whereas what we have with something like this is like, oh, like he can turn his skin to stone, making him immune to bullets and physical altercations, but then like he can't do that to his internals, so attack his internals directly with a fire extinguisher and suddenly you've got very, very upset and very, very like disturbed Nine-Tailed Fox. Throw him out a window from it to like a 50-story building. Yeah, gravity still has an effect, and even stone skin is not going to do well against crushing terminal velocity. And so seeing that was really cool to just be kind of around and being a part of, and just seeing the creativity of the writing there is really powerful. Nine-Tailed Fox, powerful enemy, very fun and satisfying to see him go. Although I kind of wouldn't wish anybody had to go like that. The organization, they're kind of good guys now, but they're definitely like lawful evil, where they're gonna work with Ling Ling and Luan, but that's because they can benefit a lot more working with them than not. So like it's gonna be interesting to see like where they go and if they are gonna keep being in their good graces, or if Ling Ling is gonna have to separate herself from them at some point. But worse, like the organization itself seems really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to learning more about them. But they seem like a super mafia, super yakuza, where they're maybe not steeped in traditions, like which might hold them back. But they seem to have their fingers in a lot of pies. I'm curious to see if they're internationally effective too, or if they just have a lockdown in China in this story. It's just really cool to see. And then finally, Dr. Daoshi. Yeah, he's the interesting one. He's like the superpower guy who like is obviously kind of like the big bad. Yeah, talking about overpowered villains, he's definitely the one. Yeah, whole like teleports behind you, Omarumu Shindeyu, you know, like he kind of is too cool for school. I'm impressed that Ling Ling was able to like drive him off to begin with, but obviously he wasn't feeling like he was actually in danger. So I'm gonna be interested to see how they're gonna take it, because they're doing a good job making him seem unstoppable. I wonder how they're gonna bring him down. I also think the body enhancements. Obviously, he's supposed to be some kind of paragon with body enhancement key power, but it does make it feel pretty broken compared to the other forms. Just because he's just gonna like, oh yeah, I'm so tough, like you can't hurt me. I can teleport behind you because I'm so fast. I only used like 1/5 of my power, and I shattered a wall. Oh man, I hate that I can't unleash my full strength. It's like, yeah, the world can't contain its full power. Like, I know we need to have a threat that's credible, but it gets a little ridiculous. And I worry that like what ends up happening with characters like that is that they come across super powerful until they need to be defeated, and then they suddenly are just not capable of doing what they're fully capable of. They like the things that they easily did before are suddenly just not easy to do. It's actually a problem that we see a lot in My Hero Academia. A lot of the bad guys in My Hero Academia and other superhero movies in general, I think, do this a lot, where like they're just so advantageous and they just seem to be on the ball with everything. They just know what they're doing and everything's going their way, and like they can't be stopped. What are we gonna do? And then when the confrontation actually comes, it suddenly feels like, oh, well, whatever happened to all that like incredible strength? Like what happened to all that insanity? Like, I understand that like the heroes have been able to like, you know, through the power of friendship, you know, like figure things out, but like it doesn't mean that they're supposed to just be easy peasy all of a sudden. So I don't know. It's a dangerous road to walk, and I'm curious to see what they're gonna do. So if we don't see like an uptick in Luan and Ling Ling's like capabilities, I don't know how they're going to be able to make him like stay who he is without nerfing him to be able to let them win. Unless of course the story is going to end with like Ling Ling losing. Maybe this is going to be one of those bad guys win stories. Those are pretty rare. They're very fascinating, but they have to be done right or else people are just going to be pissed off. But I think they could do it right. Like they've got the writing capability. So I'm curious to see more about him, obviously, but at the moment I'm a little like kind of like I'm getting bored with him because he's like, oh, he's so powerful. It's like, is it even worth like even considering that they could beat him? It's like, kinda. Like it's cool to see what they did, and like I said, it pushed Ling Ling really far, and I'm really curious to see that. And to be fair, Ling Ling's like using a ton of power to keep Luan alive, and so like Ling Ling's probably like not even revealed just how crazy powerful she actually is, because like her sword exploding powers was when she was nerfed, so maybe she can keep up with him. Maybe she just needs to be better prepared, but like, yeah, it's just gonna be so. So, anyway, so Jack, you're saying, well, game's full of twists and turns, so may not even need straightforward power leveling. That's true, and like he could have a built-in weakness. That's one of the things that's very common in like Celtic lore. Is like you'll get very overpowered creatures or beings, but will have a very interesting weakness, like Meta, like the. I don't know. She can be very different like aspects of lore, but Media in Celtic lore, she's really crazy strong, practically immortal, but she was defeated by cheese. Like she was taking a bath and someone threw cheese at her and she died, or she nearly died because for some reason cheese is her weakness. So like I don't know, maybe that's gonna be it. Maybe we'll throw cheese at the guy and he'll just collapse into a puddle, and like we'll win. But again, like unless it's based on actual like Chinese lore, I would be very disappointing. So you've already seen glimpses of some other future villains, though they're easy to overlook. Okay, future villains. Who have we seen? Well, like I would say the apostate for sure. Like I really feel bad because I feel like he's gonna have to make an appearance at some point, and like that's not gonna be fun. Who else? Well, the Doctor is definitely like he's prevalent. Like he's been in all like the whole story up till now. I also think that like the organization's hiding working with people who like they've hinted at that like they need to fight against. So we'll have to see what happens in the future. But like yeah, there's definitely like a plethora of challenges to overcome. I'm curious to see where this is all going to lead, and like what are the types of things they're going to be able to kind of work through and deal with in the future. But enemies fairly strong. Like I said, I think we need to see more before I can really nail down any specific like feelings on them. Just that in some ways I'm kind of like meh on the enemies, but they've been pretty enjoyable so far. Well fleshed out and definitely compelling to say the least. All right, so finally, predictions. I've already made a couple, but I want to highlight them again. I think that Ling Ling has some very interesting stuff going on in her past. I think there's a lot more to like why she came down the mountain. I think that there's a reason why she seems so innocent. Maybe it's a self-defense mechanism, a way to convince herself that she's not the bad guy. But it seems like she's capable of some pretty terrible stuff if she really gets motivated. Oh, those insert graphics. Yeah, those could be tough to keep up with, to be fair. Like, they tend to flash, like, boom, 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 really fast. Like, I could go back and study them for sure, but, like, not all of them are consumer-friendly. Which is good, though, because if they're, like, hinting at future stuff, like, all you should be giving people is a perception rather than anything else. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so future predictions. I think the apostate's gonna come back into play, and it sounds like unless he can find some other loophole, like Mao is definitely gonna have to kick the bucket for that, and that's unfortunate, but it also makes a lot of sense. Yen, I'm worried about her because she's very clever, but she also keeps getting caught off guard, and she's had some close calls. And she's also such a likable character. I'm terrified that they're gonna kill her off because she kind of has like the potential to have a lot of death flags. So hopefully not, but we'll have to see. Luan. Okay, my biggest prediction is actually for the big finale, whatever this is going to end up being. I think they're going to finally get to the point where they can actually get that elixir that gives you immortality. But I think there's going to be a big reveal and a super challenging choice. I think either the cost of the elixir is going to be so great that it's not worth it, or if they do go for it, like it's going to be a super sad, bittersweet choice. I also think Luan. I said Jake saying like Yen's too cool to die. I agree. I hope she's not too cool to die, but but that partly makes me scared that she will die, unfortunately. So I think either in the end, Luan is going to release his hold on life to save Ling Ling somehow. Like really like die. Like I think he'll actually have to die. Like I think he's capable and willing to make that choice. He kind of technically did, although he did loophole his way out of it, which is fair. I mean, if you have a way to do that, you might as well try for it. Hedge your bets. But I could see Luan in the end being like, hey, look, I wanted to have a peaceful life where I didn't have to focus on death and killing all the time, and you gave me that. I don't need to live anymore. And so I think he'll like just accept death in the end. Or Ling Ling is going to somehow have to pay the price to give him the elixir, and that she will die. I just can't see the two of them like making it to the end of the story, unfortunately. I'd love to be proven wrong, but this story, it's proven that it's very mature, it's very gritty, it's very much like cost determined. So I don't think they're both gonna make it to the end. I also just like, again, like I think that they're best friends and like almost more like siblings. It implies that there's kind of like a potential romance between them, and I think that'd be really cute to see. But I also just don't get the impression it's meant to be a lasting one. Does that make sense? Like, I think it's gonna have a really bittersweet, sad ending. Like, I think it's going to be like the heroes won, but at such a high cost that it's gonna be just heart-wrenching. That's my prediction on the genre's direction, because there's just too much death and manipulation and power for us to be able to get to the end without some pretty severe casualties, meaningful casualties especially. So yeah, that's kind of my ultimate prediction. I think that immortality is just going to prove to be too elusive and not appropriate. Maybe though, I could see like if we take the path of like Luan makes a sacrifice, I could see Ling Ling achieving her. Maybe she has a reckoning with her past self and her like dark side, and she's able to cast it aside. And through Luan's death, she might achieve her ascension and gain immortality the Taoist purist way, and just become a demigod effectively, destroying the doctor dude. And then going back up the mountain to like live out the rest of her eons in solitude, sorrowful solitude. That's my guess. Anyway, other than that, I don't see too many other predictions other than the fact that the Doctor's going to be a thorn in their side forever. That's going to be super annoying. I guess the other thing is I think we're going to get showcases of all the other Taoist traditions. I think we're going to end up seeing key figures from each of them. But that's not a tough call. Like, it makes a ton of sense that that's what would happen. I can see this story having 6 total books, but that's just a kind of a shot in the dark. One for each type of Taoism, and then a final kind of like culmination. Could be 7. I don't know if there's a significant number to Chinese mythology, they might just shoot for that. So like maybe that could be a guide point for it, but my guess would be 6. Jack, you're saying the predicting the Doctor will play a major part in the next episode. Could be wrong. Yeah, I think he's gonna be getting his fingers in a lot of pies, but he seems like he's like I said, he's the big bad. I think he's going to be the end goal enemy, but that he's going to be the motivation coordinator and facilitator of pretty much every major obstacle in their way, because that's his role. He's been like, I mean, like I said, like the apostate, it's absolutely going to be a bad guy that they have to fight, and he's the one that is going to bring about that resurrection for him. So yeah, absolutely, the Doctor may not be super impactful as of now, but he will be towards the end. So yeah, but like I said, my guess is 6 books total. That'll be enough to explore all the different like houses, and to be able to have a kind of a big culmination end game type fight at the end, probably. So we'll have to see. But yep, that's pretty much everything I got to say on it. Jack, is there anything else you want to say about this while you're here? I'll read your comments for anyone who happens to be just listening. But like, Maybe, do we have any estimated timetables of when the next part's expected to come out? Do we have anything else that's going on in Fruitbat Factory that might be worth like mentioning? I know you guys keep updating Orange Juice. I get seeing those updates, and that's always fun. But God, that's a game I own and I need to play, but I just never have the time, and like the time I have, I usually spend it on other stuff that, like, especially that my friends are doing. Like, I just got a buddy who's just revamped a Minecraft server, and I'm gonna go and goof around in that probably later. But yeah, orange juice, 100% orange juice looks like a lot of fun. Want to get into that? I guess, okay, so thanks for playing the game. Had a great time following it again. Please look forward to episode 4. I think we'll see something about it this year. Excellent. Good. Yeah, keep me up to date on that. There's going to be a lot of good stuff. And I will talk to you, well, everybody. Like, I will be making an announcement of the next Friday series we'll be covering in probably the next few days. Patrons, you guys are going to have a big hand in selecting what our next game is going to be on the channel. I cultivate the list, so I'm going to narrow it down to about 2 or 3 choices, but you guys are going to directly help me choose it, because we're getting to the point now where I'm really grateful that there are a lot of different studios and publishers, especially newer ones, who want to, who like what we do on the channel, and they want to have their stuff featured on it. And like, I definitely want to support that, but I also need to make sure it's measured and guided. Fruitbat Factory, I'm always going to be like listening to you guys and keeping up to date with like titles that you come out with and offer because you guys are just fantastic. So thank you so much. I know we'll be seeing a lot of you in the future, but we'll have to see what the next series directly is. In future, I plan to have decided what the next series is for these rap parties, because I want each rap party from here on out to end with an official announcement of what the next series is. But for tonight, I can't say that because I was cultivating the list these last couple days. Again, the holiday season really just kicked my butt, and so I'm not as on top of things as I want to be. But I assure you, anybody who's listening to this, there will be another great series to enjoy. But if you have something on your palette that you want right now, you want to blitz through some stuff, we got some fantastic examples of things. Some of our Friday slots you should recommend, like I highly recommend, if you haven't played Seabed, you've got to play it. It's one of my top rated visual novels of all time, and it was a Friday slot from Fruitbat Factory. One of these ones that they slipped my way, looked cute, played it, blew my socks off, which is another reason why I want to make sure Fridays are a lot more about like community driven and smaller, like maybe smaller, not necessarily smaller, but like obviously I'm gonna play titles like Muv-Love and Steins Gate and other big things. Like I'm sure Danganronpa, Higurashi, are going to be on our main series on Mondays and Wednesdays, but I want to say Fridays for more like unique ones. Oh, Jockey, yeah, check out the Switch version. Yeah, I downloaded it. I haven't had time. I've been trying to play like Fire Emblem Three Kingdoms, so I love Fire Emblem games. I still haven't been able to beat that yet because I just like it's so sad, but like it's one of those things that I'm just not finding or making the time for. I'm sure I'll get to it, but I have no idea when. But I'm definitely going to take a good look at it and might do an update based on like some of the new content that you told me about in there. So like maybe I'll even make it. Depends on like how it appears and like how in depth it looks like it might go. But anyway, regardless of that, I normally be making an announcement right now, but you'll have to see in the next week. Look on my Discord or look on the channel, and then, like I'll probably make a community post about it as soon as I decide. Hopefully, I'll have an answer by the end of next week, and my goal is to have Monday or Tuesday to have it officially like announced. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. It's a pleasure having you here for the stream and just being able to share these ideas and share the story. Jiangshi was a fantastic series, and I look forward to future chapters of it. And as always, there's always great things to look at on the channel. We've been doing this a while, but the channel's gained some fun momentum. We've got a lot of great stuff on the horizon. I'm excited. 2021 is going to be a weird year. 2020 sucked, but 2021 I'm hoping is going to be a little bit more real, like get back to more realistic, like normal life stuff. But regardless of what the path of the future takes, the channel is doing wonderfully, and I look forward to expanding it and making it better. I look forward to hearing from all of you as we go and expand ourselves. But yes, thank you guys so much. Jake, thank you so much for being here and answering questions. And you know, everybody who's listening to this, thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you all in the future. I'll be reading and responding to all comments, so if you're from the future listening to this, leave a comment. I'm sure I'll be able to like respond to you directly. So, thank you so much, and until the next video you guys watch with me or pursue me in next, I will see you all later. Have a